My students had reported that when they had a major trauma in their life, their mindset broke. Well, it broke for me too. We behave to the meanings of our words. Why holds us stuck? Whys generate reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications. We beat the living crap out of ourselves. What might I do? What might I do differently right now? You're not necessarily stuck unless you choose to stay there.
Have you ever felt that life is just happening to you no matter what? You're somehow stuck in at the mercy of all these things that just seemingly happen to you and you and you and nobody else. You've done everything. You followed the coaches, you've done the outlines, but you still feel like you're stuck. So today we talked to Blair Dunkley from Rewiring the Mind. And Blair, my first question to you is, why? Why do so many high-performing, capable people still feel that they're stuck and frustrated and feel like things are happening to them?
Well, I've done a ton of research on language patterns and how language patterns impact your life. Because one of the things that I say is we behave to the meanings of our words. And the question that you just asked, right out of the gate, why? Well, I have a big ton of research around that. And virtually all of that research points to why holds us stuck. Using that word, I refer to as the why hole. We have whys generate reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications. And that means that we also wind up judging ourselves as opposed to evaluating what's going on. We have that internal self-judgment. We beat the living crap out of ourselves. It's not even funny. I mean, so many people do this virtually automatically. Number one. Number two, why? If you think about it, if it's a true why and not what I referred to as a disguised what or how, true whys are 100% past-based. In other words, all of this, the answer to a why, has to come from something that you've already done or some experience you had or some information you found out, and it's all past information. It's all past. There's no ability to change, adapt, do anything. Do we need to collect information sometimes? Absolutely, yes. But when we are stuck in our why hole, it's like I refer to it as a why hole hotel.
So question for you. I want to jump in here. So what I'm hearing you say is that this isn't about using a language that I'm going to have to really figure out how to ask this question properly. But are they like trapped is what I'm trying to say. So they're trapped because they are using a language where there is no way out. What should they be doing instead?
Great question. First thing, change the question and notice, are you getting a question that is actually present tense? Is it something that you can do right now? So replace what you did right now is you changed your why question that you asked me into a what question and a how question. So, what can they do? How can they do it? So that's literally the answer that you just did. Most people don't because they're self-criticizing at this point. They're beating themselves up and they're stuck in their why hole. Then they look for what caused, past tense, this to be. That's a disguised why. But if they ask themselves simply two questions, what might I do? Or the second one is, what might I do differently right now? To get yourself out and looking around and looking for change. Because if you don't find a different way out of where you are, can you get out of where you are?
So are they running a bad pattern? I mean,
absolutely, yes.
Let's maybe talk about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And you've studied this a lot. So give us maybe some, for somebody who's never heard of it or has heard of it, is not really entirely clear what it means. What is NLP?
Neuro-linguistic programming is a study of how people use their brain in a pattern recognition issue to acknowledge where they are. So they have neuro-linguistic, which neural language programming, basically, it's the language of programming the brain. I've studied that thoroughly. I'm trained in it. I was at life skills colleges for 35 years. I used it. It was not as reliable as I would have liked it to be. It worked in certain situations. It did not work well in most situations. So that was a breakdown. However, where it did work is it took a pattern where a person was stuck. It got them to identify that pattern in the present and find how to change that pattern moving forward. So it turned you from basically a rear-facing, like looking through your life through a rear-view mirror, to forward-facing, looking at your life going ahead and figuring out, where might I want to go next? And then putting into steps and reframing that possible future as the destination of that's where I want to go. So now that I know where I want to go, what might I need to do to get there?
So it's almost like a challenge between a goal setting of I have to get clear of where I even want to go, and then using the right language for that. So I'm going to throw a wrench in here.
Please.
So if I think about my mother, Blair, so my mother believes that that's blasphemy, what you just said. And she's very religious.
Uh-huh.
If Jesus had to carry his cross, then what is happening to her in her life? Then that is the equivalent of her cross, and therefore she must schlep on that cross throughout her entire life. How does somebody, that's not going to work in your system, because they are basically a victim to what their brain is telling them. And are they like wrong thinking that?
No. Like, I won't take on that. In fact, I've trained up a few religious authorities. You know, a Roman Catholic priest, Camille Pichet, was Father Pichet. He loved this because it's a matter of choice, not a matter of fact. So these models work in whatever area you want. Now, Father Pichet used the mind models and life skills and took himself, he was a father that was, his congregation was up in northern Canada in the Northwest Territories. And he moved from that remote location and stood out for his work that he did, and eventually wound up going all the way to the Vatican. So if he viewed himself as a martyr or as somebody who needed to carry the cross, did he do it with the full weight of the cross, or did he do it with the energy that Christ fulfilled him and gave him, so that, you know, Christ was the person that went on the cross for all of us. And virtually in every religion that religious leader that I've talked to, there's a freeing possibility. There's always the point of some God, deity, entity, whatever, gives you the opportunity to move forward in your life if you so choose. And if you don't choose, if you choose that some people refer to as the righteous path, which is heavy, hard, and challenging, does that make it right or wrong? No, it's non-judgmental. It's just that's the path you've chosen to go. Now, you can choose a different one.
Does somebody like that, I'm so sorry, I keep interrupting you here,
No,
but,
that's okay.
but I'm like so excited about this, because it's like, is somebody like my mother, you say they're actually choosing this, because she will swear that she's not choosing it, that it is everybody else who is doing it to her, the system, other people. So take me into the psychology of this. I think it's really important for our audience, for our listener, to understand how they can catch themselves in a pattern, maybe where there's like, well, I'm not as bad as our mother, but the system is rigged against me.
fair ball. Well, the number one thing to take a look at is you can call it the system is rigged against me, or life is life and I have choice. So if you choose to view it as rigged against you, you will behave that way because we behave to the meanings of our words. So if we're telling ourselves that that life is rigged against you, you will look for evidence and probably find some moderately valid evidence that life is rigged against you. I've just gone through a heck of a tough time in the last few years. I've gone through and come out the other side of with cancer, 2 replaced tips, and a bunch of other minor issues from the radiation that I'm having my last surgery next week on to clear up the last remaining little bit that I have to deal with. Now, do I have to view myself as a victim, or do I take that as what I've gone through and it's just what I did? Do I have to feel like that was a horrible thing to go through? I could, but I'd rather just examine it as what is. And that's what it was. Those things happened to me, matter of fact. Let's go forward to figure out what else I might be able to do. And I personally ask myself, what is the number one thing I love to do? I love helping people. So what do I do most of? Get on, podcasts like this, share the information, get it so that people don't have to be locked in unless they love it. And some people, I won't agree with them personally for me, but for them, every evidence that they give me is that's their life. That's what they enjoy. Hey, more power to you. If you want to go through that, that's fine. Unless you're already calling yourself depressed by it. But if that in some way empowers you and gives you purpose and meaning, great. I have no issue.
Take me through the trigger event. What made you get into this? Because something like this does really not happen overnight. It's not like the sky opens, the angel sing, and then you go like, oh, epiphany, I need to retrain the way I think.
Okay.
I mean, that's the end result. So what was your trigger moment? Or rock bottom moment typically is a massive transformation. What was it?
Well, I have 2 moments in my life. One when I was 8 and one when I was about 26, 27. So about 28 years ago. The first one was my mom, a massive influence in my life. My mother volunteered at Canadian Mental Health. I'm up here in Canada. And she wound up going up to the executive director of Canadian Mental Health, asking for $100 to put on a spring tea. She called it a strawberry tea for 200 patients. So 50 cents a patient. And she went up to ask the executive director for that budget of $100.
Mm-hmm.
She came back to the car crying because she was flatly turned down. And you know what? That was a huge moment for me. That I didn't want money to get in the way of helping people. Now, I don't have to have money. I don't give away money, but I do commit time and quality of time to help people transform their lives. Now, that was one. Number 2, my dad, next huge influence. At the age of, actually started 21, I'd be 28. At Life Skills College, my dad went into a coma, and he was in a coma for 14 years before he passed.
Oh my God.
And that I was teaching people, I was using life skills, which was working pretty well, but not wonderfully yet. And that's what got me into doing more research. But I also got trained up in mindset. And I thought mindset was the slickest thing since sliced bread. Honestly, it was wonderful.
You're like, where do you sign me up? I want to have better thoughts here myself. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And so I did that, and I was wonderful. And then my dad went into the coma, and oh my gosh, my mindset broke.
Ugh.
And I couldn't get it back for the life of me. And I 2 weeks after my dad went into a coma, the doctors called their family in and said, to us all, your father, your husband, is got a 99% chance of being in this coma for the rest of his life.
Oh, wow.
He's never likely going to come out. He never did. He was in that coma in a locked-in state for the next 14 years before he passed. That impacted me dramatically. I went home after that, went downstairs, took a shower, and just broke down uncontrollably crying in the shower that evening when hearing that news. Crawled out and realized I got to go talk to my mindset coach because my trainer was my mother and she's impacted by her husband being in a coma as well. So I can't go to her. I'll go to my mindset trainer. So I went again about 2 weeks after that. I got an appointment, went in and chatted with her, and I'd been trying to rebuild my mindset on my own using all the skills that I was teaching my students and myself at the college, and it just wasn't working. And my students had reported that when they had a major trauma in their life, their mindset broke. Well, it broke for me too. I thought it wasn't working. But anyway, she had me go through about the 90 minutes of the same stuff that I'd put myself through. And then at the end of it, she said, Blair, you just don't believe enough.
Yeah. Bring it on, mama. Uh-huh.
Exactly. Like I flipped her the bird and a huge FU. And I was fuming now. Oh my gosh, I was pissed.
How can you not be? You're like, my father is in a coma. I'm coming to you for help, and you telling me I'm not good enough in this particular technique while I'm like really struggling here. Okay, take me through the rest of this.
Yeah, honestly, like she walked me through those exercises and nothing stuck. And that's what she said. You don't believe enough. And I just left and I go, that was it. That was the impetus.
I'm done with this. Yeah.
Double down and do this because at Life Skills College, 80% of our student population at any given time was potentially suicidal. We got the ones that other people, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, nobody wanted. They were the rejects from the system and we got them. And that was my population. And at Life Skills, we got up to and did a 10-year longitudinal study and got up to a 76.2% success rate. And while I was doing that and shifting, some of the life skills around, I started getting the idea of filling in the gaps of the research that the research ended early. And so it wasn't fully completed. So I started doing research and identifying, like, what's identifiable? Like, how can you name and label something? Make it repeatable. So if you do it over and over again, you get a similar result every time, and duplicate it. It's got to be duplicatable so that it can be transferred to somebody else. And that's huge. So I used that basic framework of life skills and applied it to my research, thinking that it was an extension, but it became more than just life skills. It became what I call now mind models, which are tested frameworks.
So now the next question is, of course, the obvious and most critical one. So when you are in a funk, and I think this happens a lot, right? So even to me, and I would think I'm pretty advanced, but maybe I'm not. So the fire happens. We lose our house. Somebody has a tragedy. Somebody has to go to the hospital. There's an emergency. Life happens. Now it gets really dicey. How does our audience, with the weight on their shoulders of life, bad luck, whatever we may call it, how do they get out of it? What do they do now?
Well, some people don't do anything and they dive into it. Those are the people that are going, like they go into the why hole and they spin around and they look at how horrible everything is and they judge everything and they want to blame everybody else. And their finger is pointing out here instead of back to them and saying, well, what might I do differently in my head? And when it's horrifically horrible, the first thing that I do, and I've been through a lot of crap in my life, not just my father, but death of my 7-year-old nephew who looked like he could have been my son, the whole 9 yards, and a whole bunch of other things. But at the end of the day, we have to do the tough thing, and that is to accept what is. It's tough to move on if we don't start with acceptance. When we start with acceptance, then we become aware of our pain. When we have that pain, we can also acknowledge that pain and know, absolutely know, I have never been permanently in pain all of my life. Therefore, pain, no matter how bad it is, eventually comes to an end. So what might I do differently if my pain, if I could see my way through my pain, what might I be able to do right now to look for that light at the end of the tunnel, where I'm looking down this tunnel and it's just a black hole? Well, first thing, stop looking down, because a lot of people will just be walking around with their head down, physiologically doing that.
I mean, you see people actually sometimes when they're walking, and now with the phones, I think even an increasing number of people are permanently looking down. So you say that psychologically, that's a terrible thing to do.
Well, you know what? One of the things that NLP got 100% right is eye movement pattern and head tilt. So eye movement pattern, if you look up, you're accessing the visual part of your brain, looking from side to side or moving your head back and forth like this, but mostly just your eyes back and forth. Then that's auditory. And if your head tilts down and your eyes are looking down, that's both internal dialogue, like you're talking to yourself, but also you're accessing your kinesthetic, your emotional area, how you're feeling. And so if you're down on your phone doing all of this stuff, you're probably involved with your emotions and you are more prone to being self-judgmental. But if you lift your head up, look around every once in a while, every couple of minutes, just lift your head up and look around and notice life hasn't changed. Life is not terrible. It's still about the same as it was before. You didn't die, and hopefully you didn't get hit by a bus because you were not watching where you were going.
Yeah.
But, that whole thing, you do that, and all of a sudden it starts shifting you. Like right now, me telling you this story put a smile on your face.
Yeah, it did. And you know what else I remembered? I was going on a walk, and there was this boy, maybe he was like 10, 12 years old, and he was ahead of me and ahead of his family. So when he arrived and then I arrived, I said, you got an impressive pace coming up this mountain. And I said, well, I really like being at the top of the mountain. And he just goes like, well, why is that? I said, because when you're up here and you look down where our house is, everything feels so insignificant. And it reminds me that my big problems down there are meaningless up here because I can see how little everything is. And then he looks at me and he says to me, I never thought about it, but I like it. And it reminded me of that little story that I hadn't thought about in a long time when you said that. And that was all about this change of perspective is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it is. And we have a mind model that is about your point of view, your perspective, and your perception. And sometimes we get locked into our perception. And what we need to do is change our perspective. So we have this point of view. And I loved your face and your head movement. If I look at it from an NLP point of view or even a mind model point of view, looking down, you were looking down, accessing your feelings. A smile was coming over your face. You'd come up. You shared the story wonderfully. And your head's moving back and forth as though you're actually hearing that conversation.
Exactly.
And you glance up and you look around at the sky, at what is there, and then you stare out a long way, like you break your gaze, but you're now focused away from you and looking at that insignificant stuff below you, below the mountain. And and you go like this, it's insignificant. And that, you're absolutely right. But do we know how to call upon that intentionally, virtually 100% of the time? You did it automatically. That's a mind model that you just used. All I did is codify these things called mind models that work. Like it just worked like a charm for you. And I didn't teach you anything. You know it. But did you name and label it? And that's the difference. When we name and label it, we can pull it up on demand.
So what I'm hearing here is that if you do the work and when you get yourself involved into these models and you understand these models, it is much easier to break a destructive pattern and go into a constructive pattern. And sometimes with something as little as what you just did, a suggestion.
Correct. People think these mind models are something big that are horribly difficult to do. They're not. They're all actually identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable models that I identified by observing effective behaviors. What's already working for people in the world. And hey, if your mother and carrying the cross and doing all of that hardship stuff is working for her, I don't have a problem with that. That's her model of the world. I don't need to change it. But if it's not, if she'd rather have a different way of going through life, then mind models can help. It's just, I don't need to judge. I just evaluate and ask people, is this effective for you? The answer is yes. Next. It's the one that say, no, I want to work with.
One more important thing that really sticks out. So you say it's not even your thoughts of the problem, is the structure.
Exactly. Because again, I'll go back to my opening quote that I say all the time. We behave to the meanings of our words. So when we behave to the meanings of our words, it's our meanings of our words. So our personal interpretation, but we behave to that. And so if we judge ourselves, and we'll probably accept the judgment of others on us. But we don't have to, because we can choose to go from being judgmental to being evaluative simply by doing one thing, one simple thing each day. Write down 3 things that you did effectively that day. At the end of the day, that's all for 1 week, and see what that does to your brain. Do you actually start noticing your effectiveness and what you've done that you did in your life that was effective for you?
It's almost like this is the basis of the positive thought and gratitude and creation and manifestation, literally all at once. Because a lot of people, I think, do this with the gratitude, where they say you do things that you're grateful for, and then more things come into your life. But what I'm hearing you say is almost a personal taking an assessment, a personal assessment of some sort to say, what is true about what I believe today? I know that I nailed that. That is a fact. That is true. And to find the evidence. And then as a result of it, more evidence will appear.
I concur, but I would stay away from the language of I believe this to I have, and you referred to this as I have evidence of this. When you have externally verifiable evidence and it's not your belief that it's evidence, is externally verifiable. In fact, anybody that saw you do it would say, yes, you did that very well too, exceptionally well. Great, good.
Good.
That's not your opinion anymore. That's fact. And when you can get it to fact, that changes your belief, because behaviors lead belief, not belief leads behaviors. Behaviors change your belief.
Powerful. So the message of today then is you're not stuck. You just believe in a bad pattern.
You're not necessarily stuck unless you choose to stay there, because it's choice.
Yes.
The power of choice is incredibly huge. It's underestimated. So when you choose to change, you can change. If you choose not to change, you can't change. It's that simple.
And there's no police out there that tells you one is better than the other. I think this is where the freedom of making choices come in. The ultimate power of freedom and manifestation is it's your life and you're in charge of what you want to bring in and call in and create for yourself.
Absolutely true.
I love that. So for somebody who wants to know more now about your work or considers working with you, where do we send them, Blair?
Well, it's really simple. They can go to blairdunkley.com.
Excellent. And we'll have that in the show notes so that people can check you out. Well, that's it for us for today.
I'd just like to thank you, first of all, very much for having me on the show. I think this is wonderful. And I'd like to ask your audience, if you got anything out of this, please, or anything that Bea has already done, can you please give her a 5-star rating? It'll be huge, huge for her show. So please consider that small gift back if you've gotten anything out of this today. So that's huge. One other thing is I will give you a link to the 3 E's. It's some 3 mind models that I call the 3 E's. And it's a little ebook that will you can send out to your listeners or have them download it. And it has the 3 E's: effective versus ineffective, external versus internal, and if evaluation versus judgment, plus an hour and 20-minute masterclass on that for free. If they'd like to explore a little bit more, if they want to go deeper, blairdunkley.com. That's all.
Beautiful. That's a wonderful resource. Well, thank you so much. It's very generous of you to invite our audience, and that saves me this piece that I would be normally saying right now. So Blair, thank you so much for being on the show today. And as always, I am selfishly enjoying all these conversations. I always feel like I'm learning something. And even though I sometimes, I feel like I'm fairly advanced in a lot of these models, but
Absolutely.
It's not true. You constantly need to work at everything. It's a work in progress at all times. And with that, I leave our audience. I hope you have a fabulous remainder of the rest of the day. Thank you so much for giving your time to us, and we see you again next time. And goodbye. That's it for this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show, Founders of the Future. If you're done playing small and ready to build the future on your terms, subscribe, share, and help us reach more trailblazers like you. And if you're serious about creating, growing, and scaling a business that's aligned with who you are, schedule your Uncovery session at uncoverysession.com. Lead with vision. Move with purpose. Create your future.